Okay, let's dive in. Picture this. It's morning, May 3rd, 2025. You're deep in the Alluri Sitarama Raju district, the ASR district of Andhra Pradesh.
Beautiful area, very hilly, lots of green.
Exactly. Lush hills, maybe some mist hanging around, but it's quiet, really quiet.
Unusually so for a morning.
Yeah, eerily quiet. Shops are closed, roads are empty. It's a band, a total shutdown.
And this is all about something called Government Order Number 3. Sounds a bit dry.
It does, right, like bureaucratic paperwork. But trust me, for the tribal communities here, GeoNum 3 is, well, it's everything. It's about rights, identity.
So what did it actually do, this Num 3?
It promised 100% reservation for scheduled tribes, STs, and teacher jobs within their own designated areas.
Wow, 100%. That's significant.
Huge. Think about it. Local teachers, people from the community who speak the language, understand the life, the challenges.
Teachers who are likely to stay, presumably, unlike outsiders who might find it difficult.
Precisely. But then comes the conflict. In 2020, the Supreme Court said no.
Ah, okay. They struck it down.
Yeah, citing that 50% limit on reservations, the established legal ceiling.
Right. The fairness argument versus the specific needs argument, it's a classic constitutional tension.
Exactly. So today, we're really getting into why. Why is getting Jegonon 3 back so absolutely critical for the people in ASR? What's the heart of this fight?
Well, let's go back to 2000. That's when Jago 3 was issued. And you called it a lifeline, maybe a golden ticket is another way to think about it, specifically for teaching posts in these scheduled areas.
A golden ticket. I like that. What was the vision behind it?
The vision was pretty powerful. You have these incredibly remote villages, right? Schools might just be simple huts.
Maybe no electricity, difficult access.
Exactly. Fetching water is a daily task. Roads might be non-existent. The idea was to get teachers who knew that life, who wouldn't be fazed by it.
And could speak the local dialects, connect instantly.
Connect instantly, yes.
Yeah.
And be role models. Someone who shares their background, understands their world.
Makes perfect sense. But then 2020 happened. The Supreme Court steps in. What was their core reasoning again?
So the court's decision really hinged on that 50% reservation cap. It wasn't pulled out of thin air. It comes from major past rulings, like the Indra-Sawney case.
That's the big one, right?
That's the landmark one. The court basically said, look, exceeding 50% reservation, even for a specific group in a specific area, upsets the balance. It risks violating the constitutional idea of equal opportunity for others.
Even if the goal was positive, like helping tribal communities.
Right. They acknowledged the intent behind Jago number 3 was good, but ruled that 100% reservation just wasn't legally permissible under the current framework.
Which leaves the state government in a bit of a bind. They keep saying they're exploring legal options. What does that likely mean in reality?
It usually means a few things are happening behind the scenes. Their lawyers are definitely poring over the judgment, looking for any angle, any possible grounds for a review.
Maybe consulting outside experts, too.
Oh, absolutely. Getting different legal minds on it. They'll also be looking at what other states might have tried in similar situations, any precedents.
And internally, they have to figure out what's actually doable, politically as well as legally.
Precisely. It's a complex calculation, especially when the Supreme Court has drawn a pretty clear line on that 50% limit.
To really feel the weight of this, we need to understand the ASR district better. It's named after Alluri Sitarama Raju. Isn't he a famous freedom fighter?
He is, yes. Major figure. And the district itself is, as we said, rugged, hilly. It's home to several distinct tribal groups, the Condadora, the Portia, the Savara, among others, each with their own culture, language.
And incredibly remote, many of these villages, right?
Very much so. We're talking hamlets tucked away, sometimes hours from any main road. Access is a huge issue. Forget reliable electricity in many places. Roads might just be, goat trails.
Basic paths and schools.
Often very basic structures, maybe thatched huts, just the fundamentals.
So how do people make a living there? What's daily life like economically?
It's tough. A lot of reliance on MGN-REGI, the government's Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, for manual work.
So daily wage labor when it's available.
Right? We're working seasonally in brick kilns, perhaps. And traditional farming, like purdue cultivation, that's a form of shifting agriculture on the hillsides. Resources are scarce.
So in that kind of environment, education must seem like a real pathway out, a chance for something different.
Oh, absolutely. It's seen as a huge beacon of hope. Parents desperately want their children to have opportunities they didn't,
Yeah.
Better jobs, maybe healthcare access, just a more secure future.
Which brings us right back to the teachers, why Jogo number 3 felt so vital.
Exactly. It was seen as the guarantee that the teachers would be from the community,
Hmm.
people who understood the language, the culture, the daily struggles.
And critically, people who were more likely to stay.
Yes, that's a huge factor. The worry is that non-tribal teachers, unfamiliar with conditions or the language, might not stay long. They might seek transfers out to easier postings,
Leaving the schools with constant turnover or no teachers at all.
which undermines the whole educational process. So Jogo number 3 wasn't just policy, it felt like a promise of stability and relevance in their schools.
So fast forward again to May 3rd, 2025. All this background, this hope, this frustration, it leads to the band. What was that day like?
From all accounts, it was a powerful display of unity. The shutdown was really widespread across the district.
Shops closed, traffic stopped.
Completely. It wasn't violent, but it was a clear, strong message. We demand Goa Num 3 back. This matters.
And there were leaders organizing this, right? It wasn't just spontaneous anger.
No, definitely organized.
Yeah.
People like K. Govinda Rao, he's with the AP Tribal Association 5th Schedule Sadhana Committee. They were voicing the collective feeling.
And framing it as more than just teacher jobs.
Oh yes, for them it's about dignity, about their rights under the 5th Schedule of the Constitution, which is meant to protect tribal interests. Govinda Rao apparently used an analogy.
Oh, yeah.
He said it was like being promised biryani, a special feast, and then just being served plain rice. That sense of betrayal, of promises broken.
That's a powerful image. Captures the disappointment. So how has the Andhra Pradesh government responded, beyond saying they're exploring options?
Well, the Chief Minister, Chandrababu Naidu, has made statements reaffirming commitment to tribal welfare. That's standard political messaging.
But concrete action on reinstating the 100% reservation is tricky because of the court ruling.
Exactly. They're sort of hemmed in legally on that specific point. They have pointed to other initiatives, though. Like back in January 2025, they sanctioned a fair bit of money, around 275 crore rupees, for road projects.
Roads where?
Specifically in areas where particularly vulnerable tribal groups, or PVTGs, live, in ASR district, but also Alluri and Kakinada districts.
Okay, so infrastructure improvements,
Mm,
which are needed, no doubt.
definitely needed. Better roads mean better access to markets, healthcare, everything.
Mhm.
But it doesn't directly solve the teacher issue, does it?
No, it feels like a separate, though important, track. And this fight for Jigar number 3, it's not happening in a vacuum, is it? It fits into a pattern of other struggles these communities face.
Absolutely. It's just one piece, albeit a very significant one, of a larger picture. Just looking back at 2024 gives you a sense of it.
What kinds of things?
Well, you had protests in villages like Buruga and Chinnakonala because these still didn't have electricity. People were walking miles at night with torches just to make their voices heard.
Wow. Still no electricity in 2024.
In some places, yes. Then there was a water crisis in another village, Dandu Suraguda. The community actually had to pool their own money to dig a temporary well because the official supply failed.
They had to do it themselves.
Yeah. And remember that story about the elections in 2024. In Anantagiri Mandal, 342 tribal voters had to ride horses for 60 kilometers.
60 kilometers on horseback just to vote. Why?
No proper roads to their villages. It speaks volumes, doesn't it, about the level of basic infrastructure lacking.
It really does. Are there other examples of activism?
Sure. Back in 2022, there were protests against a planned hydroelectric project in Chinnapalli. Environmental concerns, displacement fears, and even earlier, in 2020, demands based on land rights specifically, using the Land Transfer Regulation Act to argue that non-tribals shouldn't be living or owning land in scheduled areas.
So a long history of asserting their rights, pushing back against marginalization, demanding basic services, and GNON 3 fits right into that context.
Perfectly. It was seen as one concrete gain in a vital area education, and losing it feels like a major setback.
Okay, let's circle back to the legal side then. Given the Supreme Court's firm stance on the 50% cap based on Indrasawny, is there any wiggle room? Could Go number 3, in its original 100% form, ever realistically be brought back?
Realistically, it's very, very difficult legally as things stand. The court was clear. 100% reservation crosses the line set by established constitutional interpretation focused on balancing reservation with broader equality principles.
But the tribal leaders have counter-arguments, don't they, about the unique situation?
They do. They argue forcefully that these scheduled areas are unique. The historical disadvantage is profound, the geography is isolating, and the practical reality is that non-tribal teachers often don't come or don't stay.
They also point to the 5th schedule of the Constitution, right?
Yes. The 5th schedule specifically allows for special governance and laws prioritizing tribal welfare in these areas. The argument is, Shouldn't that constitutional provision allow for measures like Jugo number 3, even if it exceeds the general 50% rule?
It's a clash of legal principles almost.
It is. And other states like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh have tried to push for higher reservations in tribal areas and faced similar legal roadblocks. The courts have generally held that 50% line pretty firmly.
So if 100% is likely off the table legally for now, what could the Andhra Pradesh government actually try to do? What are the potential paths forward?
Well, one path, though it's a huge undertaking, is to push for a constitutional amendment.
To change the rules specifically for scheduled areas?
Potentially, yes, to carve out an exception. But amending the Constitution is incredibly complex, politically difficult, and takes a very long time. No guarantees.
Okay, so that's the long shot. What about more immediate options?
Within the 50% limit, they could get creative. Maybe significant incentives like much better pay, housing allowances, career advancement perks, specifically for ST teachers who commit to working in these remote schools.
Make it a really attractive proposition.
Exactly. Try to achieve the goal, getting qualified local teachers through incentives, rather than pure reservation percentages beyond the cap. They could also look at local hiring rules, prioritizing qualified ST candidates who are actually from that specific area within the 50% overall quota.
But even that might face legal challenges.
It might. Everything needs to be carefully structured to be legally sound. Ultimately, it boils down to political will. How badly does the government want to find a solution that works for these communities, even within the constraints?
And amidst all this legal and political maneuvering, we have the voices from the communities themselves. What are people saying on the ground?
Their perspective really grounds the issue. We heard from Ramulama, a mother in Buruga village.
What does she say?
She basically said, "We need teachers who get our life, who speak our language. Without Jugo number 3, it feels like luck. Maybe we get a good teacher who stays, maybe we don't. Our kids' future depends on chance."
That feeling of uncertainty must be pervasive.
Deeply felt. And then you have K. Narasimha Rao from the PVTG Adivasi Tribal Association. He was more critical of the government's pace.
How so?
He pointed out the gap between promises and action. He apparently brought up an example of funds allocated for electricity in Anantagiri that, according to him, just vanished. It highlights this sort of long-running frustration, this feeling that commitments aren't always followed through.
So a mix of hope for education, frustration with the system, and a deep desire for teachers who understand them. Looking forward then, what's the outlook? The band showed their determination hasn't faded.
Not at all. The resolve is clearly still there. The challenge for the government is immense. Respect the court's ruling, but also respond meaningfully to the tribal community's needs.
So what concrete actions could offer some hope?
A few things seem possible. One, really fight the legal battle. Smartly focus on the Fifth Schedule's uniqueness. Maybe seriously explore that constitutional amendment route, even if it's hard.
Don't just say exploring options, actually explore them aggressively.
Right. Two, genuinely engage with tribal leaders. Don't just impose solutions, co-create them. Understand their priorities.
Makes sense. What else?
Three, implement those practical incentives we talked about. Bonuses, housing, career paths to make teaching in remote areas attractive for ST candidates. That's something they could potentially do now within the rules.
And finally,
keep investing in the basics. School buildings, yes, but also electricity, books, desks. Create an environment where learning can actually happen effectively, regardless of who the teacher is.
it's a multi-pronged approach needed then. Legal strategy, community engagement, practical incentives, and basic infrastructure.
Exactly. It's complex. Whether the political will exists to push all those levers before, say, the next election cycle, well, that remains to be seen.
So when we boil it all down, this deep dive into Goa number 3 really shows us it's so much more than just quotas or jobs, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about the future prospects of an entire generation in these communities. It's about cultural survival, about having a voice in their own development.
These aren't statistics. They're real people, real families in places like Buruga, like Anantagiri, with dreams and facing huge challenges.
And their fight for teachers who understand them, for recognition of their unique situation, is something worth remembering.
Definitely. As you go about your day, maybe keep a thought for them. Their struggle for a better future, for basic rights and opportunities in the hills of Andhra Pradesh continues. It matters.